Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm a bit of an odd one out here because I don't actually run a network, so I'm not a network operator. I'm sorry. I never was any good at it, but I had a lot of bad friends in university who took me over to the dark side, basically this. And I have a degree in public administration, but I deal with telecom stuff all the time. That's what you get when Remco van Mook and Herke Plantinga and people like that buy a lot of beer for you. And so this is me. I'm a consultant at Stratix. Stratix is a small consulting firm in the Netherlands that for over 30 years has been doing telecom policy and all kinds of related stuff in the Netherlands, pushing fiber to the home. I've worked at various places. I've basically seen almost every side of how a telco works and gets regulated. I started my career at the Dutch-German Internet Exchange, where my first presentation was at RIPE 2001 in Prague, and the first person responding was Rüdiger from Deutsche Telekom, telling me that this was the dumbest idea he had ever heard in his life, to start an internet exchange in the Netherlands and Germany at the same time. And I didn't know who the man was, so I said, well, sir, if you have a network in Germany, then maybe we should talk about cooperating and how I can use your fiber to get to a better place in Germany. Everybody laughed in a room of 500, 600 people, and I didn't know I had made a joke. There is a disclaimer to this presentation. It is ironic. I generally speak in an ironic way. Unfortunately, this isn't always recognized. Today I will be ironic and sometimes even sarcastic. To give you an example, me attempting irony about the T-Mobile routing incident in 2019, I stated that all these small networks, including Gin Distillery, Meany, and some other people who are probably here, were irresponsible and failed to call their favorite Deutsche Telekom salesperson to fix their interconnection, which of course everybody in Germany knows that you should do. Unfortunately, in a report for the Bundesnetzagentur, somebody missed the irony, and it says the smaller players did not do this and could no longer reach Deutsche Telekom's customers. I apologize for this. Disclaimer, I also don't dislike telecom firms or their staff. I like telecom firms. I work a lot with them. I'm the program manager 5G for the Dutch Association of Municipalities. I worked really well with Dutch mobile operators and the Dutch government on getting, example, antenna policy, small cell policy, contracts, etc. We now have a uniform set for 340 municipalities that they can just copy and work from, and I hope it makes life for everybody a lot easier. I also deal a lot with Etno, who is promoting this whole idea that people need to pay. But they're also nice enough that when I raised an issue about 112 not being reachable over VoLTE, etc., that they actually got somebody on it and were really positive about it. So it's great to have debates about one issue and to disagree vehemently, but to work together on something else. If you know anything about VoLTE or voice over new radio, etc., and all the troubles it has, please talk to me. Anyways, 17 big telcos are very clear. We need to get paid more. The CEO said so it's still a bit dubious who gets to pay more. But anyways, their economist consultant said that they need more, about 15 to 36 billion per year from tech giants. That's a lot of transit. But, it said so because that's needed for a sustainable internet ecosystem in Europe. And, well, they said it before. They've been saying it since 1996. I actually found meeting minutes from my old employer, the OECD, from meetings they had in 1996, where the internet was, according to people, too US-centric. And up to 15% of transatlantic IP traffic was DNS. And this was insane. And should change, and the American .com firms should pay for that traffic. In 2001, they had a meeting where Telia said that you couldn't build an IP backbone for IP transfer for best effort because that's not a viable business. Deutsche Telekom talked about the flat rate fallacy, and they wanted risk-sharing models because it was so hard to build networks and they had to carry all the investment risk, and somebody needed to pay for that. For any Germans present here, the same person still works at Deutsche Telekom, but he said that incumbents have incentives to offer local interconnection services for internet services. So maybe you might be able to quote that back to them. Then we had, of course, the GSMA. We needed something to avoid degraded quality. And then NLNOG in 2011 wanted sending party network pays. That actually caused me to organize the Berg OECD meetings on IP interconnection. I then worked at the OECD, which is an organization of countries, and I noticed that regulators in Europe and elsewhere didn't know peering people, and I just knew quite a lot of people who worked in peering. And so even though it was a right meeting in Rome, we got people to fly from Rome to Brussels to talk to the regulators. It was great fun. Again, Deutsche Telekom said that they needed an adequate return, which needed sending party network pays. Alcatel-Lucent said that content peering leads to a net loss in revenue for the internet economy and ISPs. There was an EU project that said that we needed a fair distribution of revenue share and QoS in networks. And fortunately, the European regulators weren't convinced because there were, of course, also some of you and peering coordinators, etc. And they explained that it all just doesn't work like this. So that was great. But who are, at this moment, because they said, well, telcos are right, the biggest content generators need to pay. Who are those? Well, it just so happens that I looked in my Windows Task Manager and I loaded some websites, and it's beautiful. The Ethno website loaded at my home over KPN at 112 megabits per second for a second. It was the highest I could get. Telefonica 50, KPN 15. I have no idea why, but it's beautiful. Amazon was like 50. You know, compared to normal streaming services, who's using the network more? And of course, you need to look at networks on a less than 1 second level, because 5-minute averages, then it just smooths out everything. And then if we then look at who profits from the network, when I was on the faculty board in 1995, we saved 30,000 guilders just in the first year of having email, because professors didn't send their papers around with postage anymore. That was a massive saving on the budget. The Dutch central government, because of all the networks, reduced its energy use by going to 4 data centers by over 100 gigawatt hours. Well, the Dutch tax service doesn't need paper anymore, basically. And magically, telcos are posting better profits, higher guidance. What I try to explain to regulators, what I try to explain to people who don't understand networks, that you don't build a network for traffic. You build the lanes, but the traffic are the cars. The traffic is the fill rate. The network keeps on sending all the time. Sending more traffic on a 10 gig link just means that there's more information in those bits. But the thing just keeps on popping signals back and forth, whether they have meaning to you or not. And of course, you can saturate any network, but that's not the case actually in most networks. So what you want is a very wide road that everybody can just drive on. And of course, speed is a nonsense term. Stuff doesn't go faster on a network. It's the speed of light. And Einstein had something to say about that. Actually, when we look at networks that carry the most traffic, as in some kind of meaningful data, it's probably cable networks, I think, because they continuously broadcast a DVB television signal, whether you want to watch it or not. Over 100, 200, 300 channels just keep coming to your home. If you look at that on a per gigabyte scale, that's a massive waste of bytes. We should do something about that massive waste of bytes. And you know, there's this, well, Deutsche Telekom is getting a bit of a bad rep, but that's also because they did a lot of work around this and they are very quotable. They got somebody in 2013 to design their new network, Peter Lofberg. Some people may know him. I never knew why they invited him, because the guy got his mother like 10 gig or something in 2007. Oh, 40, I'm sorry, yes, 40 gig. So you get a guy who just designs a network that's way too large. So basically he designed the network in 2013 for Deutsche Telekom that allows everybody to watch the World Cup final in unicast 20 megabits, because per 250 users you get a 10 gig, that's 40 gigs per user, and then you do 400 gig of uplink. Except of course, that's basically how everybody builds a network. We recently helped the Dutch Student Housing Organization, and some of the people here even tendered for it. Of the 8 proposals, 6 people just said, well, here's 10 gig per 48 ports, so 40 students on a port, and well, 250 megabits, that should just work, and then 4 times 100 gig uplink, and they should never have any trouble with that traffic at all. And of course, Nokia makes switches. This thing is advertised as doing up to 432 terabits per second, and well, all of France does 43 terabits per of interconnection, which I will show later. So this thing is a bit oversized. When you look at it, traffic just isn't surprising. Telcos aren't really willing to publish stuff about their traffic, but every now and then they do. And, well, in the US, 4 megabits per subscriber. There's a really nice ISP here in the Netherlands called SKV Veendam. They have one network in one town. They have 90% penetration. They have about 10,000 customers. They have no peering. They just have 2 times 40 gig uplink. But it makes it really easy to calculate what's happening on their network. And here you see they do 26 gigabits per second when the Formula 1 played. And that's 2.6 megabits per household on their network. Of course, they have DVB-C, so TV is a bit less. But this really shows that a normal Dutch town, what they normally use. KPN proudly announced to the world that it did about, well, I calculated with pixel peeping, about 2.5 terabits of peak, extra peak because of the Formula 1 at the same time. But also just basically saying, yeah, that was something that was peanuts. We handled that with ease. If you then think of SK Telecom in Korea saying it couldn't handle 1.25 terabits for Squid Game, you really wonder who runs the network there, and if they have a network operators group. BT says it does 28 terabits for the whole firm, and despite the CEO saying that, well, that might be unsustainable, people like the network team gave presentations to investors saying, yeah, that's no problem, we can handle that with ease for years to come. KPN now actually has an offer on the market in the Netherlands approved by the regulator for access to its network, where it calculates that an average user will use 5 megabits per subscriber and 21% growth per year. So, heck. There are some telcos with serious problems. Again, the same firm, I'm sorry. they complained that they had to do 357 terabytes per day of YouTube traffic. But they have 51 million customers, so that's 7 megabytes of YouTube traffic per customer per day, which fits on those 5 floppy disks. And the only thing I can think of how this might be unsustainable, if they actually use the 5 floppy disks to transmit it to their 51 million customers. But, you know, they're now building a 5G network that will allow self-driving cars and remote surgery and I don't know what else, but how they are going to do that in 7 megabytes per customer per day, I don't know. Then, of course, we have British Telecom. They're pretty nice people and they give nice presentations, also to their investors. And this is what they say to their investors. Hi, this is our network in March and April 2020 and now in 22. And COVID caused a lot more traffic on our network, but not a higher peak. And we don't really care about traffic, we care about peak. So yes, it was more gigabytes, but it wasn't really a lot more gigabits. It was just spread out more over the day. And well, we see that with other things as well. It's more spread out over the day. So it's a bit like saying, well, people drive more during the day over longer distances, but that doesn't mean that they all come in at the same time. And of course, much of traffic should be handled locally. The same BT a couple of years back in 2018 said, yeah, we have about 10 terabits of traffic on our network, and about 5 or 6 we handle through CDNs locally, because that saves a ton of money. And then we do a whole lot of peering, because that saves money, so we're really, really happy. In the past, there were other policies, of course, internet exchange policy. I found a great policy from 1998, where INEX, but also links, required you to connect to May East and May West, and places such as that, or to have a connection to a root server, I don't know. So yeah, at INEX, they had to laugh when they saw this one coming by. It was in an old paper. And of course, telcos say that they don't get paid for traffic, but they almost charge everyone. And the experience in Germany is a really nice one. And I got this from Deutsche Forschungsnetz themselves. So pre-COVID, this was their network design. They had 2 upstreams, transit. They had a whole bunch of interconnections, and then they were connected to GA, all the other academic networks in Europe, and they were more than able to handle their traffic. They had around 1.1 terabits of capacity. Then COVID hits, and all those students go home. And all of a sudden, the students complain that they have 20 to 30% packet loss on a 30 kilobit link to their university. And somehow they can't follow classes as a result of that. But this is only basically students who are on Deutsche Telekom. And then Deutsche Forschungsnetz goes talking with all the German ISPs. And magically, almost everybody agrees to a direct interconnect. So you see a whole lot more direct interconnects, also to German ISPs, 100 gig here, 2 times something there, except for Deutsche Telekom, who said either you can pay us far above market rate for what they call transit, but is just a private network interconnect, or well, you know, those students can say their career goodbye. And the event had to pay, and they still pay. This is the current situation. They have about 2.2 terabit of capacity. Their Deutsche Telekom link is not full, by far not, but they have to pay. And this happens to basically everybody in Germany. If you want to send traffic to Deutsche Telekom, you pay. Not because your network can't handle it, not because their network can't handle it, because they actually advertise that their wholesale network has 80 terabit of capacity. So how the hell they have trouble handling small streams of traffic like those from the Netherlands, nobody knows, except maybe if you see it as a way to entice people to pay for something that doesn't actually cost money, because all you need is a yellow rope of fiber. And well, in France, the French regulator collects statistics. The total traffic in France last year was 43 terabit. There's a lot of traffic, but you know, it fits on a single switch these days that Nokia sells, so it's not that much. But there's some in France that don't do any peering. Well, actually, a lot of them. It's only 2% of traffic in France. CDNs is only 17%. You saw BT, they did 60%. And most of it is in Paris, which is just crazy that you have this massive country and everything has to flow through Paris first to get to a consumer. I heard it's as bad as that traffic arriving in Marseille from Asia first goes to Paris and then back to Marseille. Particularly what we've now learned from the Ukraine about why it's good to have 19 interconnection points in your country and why that provides resilience. This is something that regulators could look at. Also, the Korea situation. Anybody know where the Koreans do their peering, their interconnection? China and Japan. That's like peering from here in Helsinki and Athens, because you know we're in the Netherlands, so the logical location to peer is Helsinki and Athens. And then they have this big sea and anchors, and well, since this week, we start worrying about people breaking stuff in the sea. So surely all that traffic should cost a lot. Oh, sorry, I see I'm over time. Well, France really has the best telecom market. I once gave a presentation about it, why all telecom product management is wrong. Can you believe it's the French that get it right? This is Orange. They have an excellent offer, which does 2 gigabits and a whole bunch of stuff. It costs you 35 euro per month. It's included with television. It's included with unlimited calls to like 100 countries. You can have a lot of fun. You even get a couple of things. So to conclude, really this should be the last time EU telcos start this debate. For 25 years they've been saying the same thing. Basically it always starts, it's the Americans. Now a lot of things are the Americans, but I don't really think that this is it. Particularly not now when we have all those streaming services with sports in Europe that do massive amounts of traffic, or European gaming firms, etc. So, nothing to support their claims. Please let it stop. On the other hand, I do make my money from it for the last 20 years, so maybe in 10 years again.
Thank you, Rudolf. It's questions. Well, we may have time for one question. Teun or Blake, whomever.
Okay, so the question here is, isn't it just that telcos miss their insane revenues from SMS and calling minutes that they want money from the content networks now?
Yes, no, maybe, because, you know, yes, in France they pay 35 euro per month, so that's madness, but in Germany they pay 75 or 80 for less, so, yeah.
Sometimes ironic.
Blake with Zeo, thanks a lot for this. What do you think are the chances, more or less, of the NLNOG proposals getting traction in the European Parliament?
Well, it's all about how you explain stuff to people. If you talk about big numbers, terabytes, nobody understands them, it sounds like a lot. If you talk about Americans, and if you say, well, it's 50% of traffic, it sounds like a lot. If you say the European Commission's website will hit consumers with 70 megabit, ETNO hits them at 120 megabit, a normal stream is 10 megabit, they look at you like, that can't be true. If you then explain them that the average traffic per household is 2.5, or in France, well, interconnection is 1.5 megabit per household in France at this moment, and you sell 2,500 megabit for 35 a month, and then you complain that you can't handle 1.5 megabit, well, maybe you need to go to the local network operators group, NLNOG, and see if you can find some competent network engineers. I do think that one of the major problems is in some telcos that their wholesale department sets the internal price for traffic. And if I was the head of a wholesale department of a major telco in Europe, I damn well would price it at €5 per megabit, because my bonus at the end of the year would be guaranteed. But that's not necessarily market price.
Thanks.
But it does explain why some people in their organization then think that traffic costs money.
Well, regardless of that, we have a small bonus for you anyway, Rudolf.
Thank you.